What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Happy Easter Monday, I think, for some of you, and happy Monday for the rest of the world. We're back. We're back for the last installment of our workshop, which is a bittersweet feeling, considering that you've been with me for the last four ones. And I appreciate everybody for joining. And I appreciate Rebecca for organizing this as well. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Thanks. Hey, I'm good. Just kind of getting back into the swing of things, Mondays.
Mm-hmm. You have a good weekend?
But yeah. Oh yeah. I went down to Georgia and
Oh,
10-hour drive. Yeah, so was down there for a few days visiting some family, so it was good.
10-hour drive straight. Any stops?
Yeah.
No stops?
Just some lunch and then bathroom breaks, that's it.
Good weather at
Otherwise,
least?
straight shoot.
Good weather?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. It's great.
Nice.
I usually go there during the winter,
Ah,
and it's a horrible drive because it's all through mountain terrain and icy and foggy. So this was a nice change of pace.
sounds like an adventure to me.
Yeah, thankfully got all-wheel drive this round, so also felt much more
Ah,
confident.
there you go. But the tires are the ones that make the difference. Just be aware.
Yeah,
For four-wheel drive, does not
it's
always give you
it's
the full thing that you need with cold
it's
weather.
it's true. It's
Right.
true. That's the fact. Yeah, but you know,
I like how
thankfully
we
this.
sidetracked the workshop into talking about cars, which is brilliant.
Yeah, let's just do something different today, guys. Right?
Yes,
Woo,
let's talk
let's.
about cars and Xbox games because we're just discussing about that before
Oh
the
yeah.
show. Maybe,
Oh
maybe we should
yeah.
turn it into a gaming show. How about that?
Oh,
Let
I'm
us know.
obsessed with the rewards, like the quizzes every
Yes.
day.
Oh, yes.
I tell people about it and they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, they're so fun. I learn new things.
No, those questions sometimes can be tricky though. I've noticed that a few times. You
Couple
have,
zings.
yeah, they try to squeeze you. Hey, we got Savin. He's on the Microsoft Developer stream. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, we all hope we had a fantastic weekend. Nice weather or not. It was nice in Seattle. We did an extreme amount of garden work, which I'm happy about it, but I'm not very proud of it because I was so tired yesterday. Just collapsed in my bed and I couldn't move. That's what happens when you're 43. It's like, yeah, we can do all that in one day, and we did, but it came at a price.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I got a couple of days off this week, so apparently I was supposed to be off today. I don't know if you knew that, but see,
Oh no, I didn't
I am
know.
committed to this
Well,
workshop.
thanks for being
I am
here.
committed. I am
Yeah.
committed to help you guys learn about identity. That's what it is.
Yeah. So now you owe us big time, I guess. No.
Not owing. Just let us know how you feel about the workshop. There will be a survey at the end, so please make sure you stay at the end. And today we have a very exciting topic. We're talking about authorization, because up until this point we've been covering authentication, more or less about getting you through the door, like securely accessing a website. But usually it doesn't stop there, or ideally it shouldn't stop there. It should stop at the point where not only do you have the user, but you know what they can do, or at least you have some rules about what they should be able to do based on roles and groups. So that's what we're covering today, which is super exciting. And if you really like this workshop, we will be more than happy to come back and do it again for people that were not able to join. So if you're joining the last one, there's no B2B today. There's no B2C there. But most of the stuff that we cover should be available for B2C. Up until this point, I am afraid that role-based authorization is not available for B2C. So now I'm saying that, but JP has been working on an extension to B2C that will allow you to actually do role-based management, role-based access control for B2C as well. So that will be probably as part of another stream, not on this Reactor workshop. But if you follow us, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you follow us, then we will be covering that in a subsequent stream, because I'm pretty sure that JP will be extremely excited and proud to present his baby, which is role-based access control for B2C. But for Azure AD, it's all built in, and that's what we'll be covering today. I hope that makes sense. And yeah, we covered authentication before, by the way. So the previous four streams were covered by, well, we covered the previous basics or fundamentals for identity for developers. Tutti Frutti Wax, that's a fantastic name. what I have to say is that this is specific for the Microsoft Identity Platform. However, some of the things that we're discussing, like role-based access control inside .NET Core, it's built into the framework. So if you are getting roles into your token by another identity provider, then the code component of this workshop will be applicable to everything. Obviously, groups like Azure Active Directory groups that we will be covering today are very specific to Azure Active Directory, but the Rbac control is built into .NET. So just so you're aware, some of the work that we're doing will be applicable to any identity provider, but the configuration element at the very beginning of the workshop or at the beginning of each section of this workshop will be specific to the Microsoft Identity Platform. If you don't have an Azure AD tenant, you can very, very easily go and create one by going into the Microsoft developer program. So let me get you the link for that. AK.ms 425. So I think it's Learn. Is it Learn? No, it's not Learn. It's developer Learn. I'll find it. In fact, I'll give you the raw link, so without an AK.ms. So Microsoft Developer Program. You can spin up an Azure AD tenant very, very quickly, so you don't have to pay for anything. It's free. You get the full E5 license, which means that you can do anything you want with Azure AD. You will also have a full permission to that tenant, so you'll be an admin and you can follow along. Anything that we do today and for the past 4 workshops has been free, so you don't have to pay for anything that we tested so far. And it's free to follow as well. And we have everything on YouTube. There will be a link at the end of the workshop so you can see it. If you follow the 4 to 5 show on YouTube, we also have the content there for you. And we also have a fantastic Discord community. So if you follow along today and then you have some questions, or if you decide to go back into one of our previous workshops that we covered before and you have questions, then you can reach out to our Discord channel, which I'm going to put in the chat as well in a second. So is the Rbac for ASP.NET Core the same as the Rbac I see in the portal.azure.com in my Azure AD tenant? So any roles that we create in Azure AD can be propagated into the ASP.NET Core. Yes. Yes. If that's the question and I answer that, then yes. If not, please let me know and I will clarify. But if you define roles inside your Azure AD tenant, then you should be able to propagate these roles and pass them down to your token, so your ASP.NET Core can actually look into these roles and provide access accordingly. But you have to code around it. They're not automatically available to you. So I passed the Discord information. Feel free to join us. Again, that's another free community that you can ask questions. Is the same Rbac that is in Kubernetes? Well, your code, your ASP.NET Core code running inside Kubernetes, if you have configured your authorization in your ASP.NET Core application, then that authorization will be available to you no matter where you're running the underlying platform, whether you're running on Full Metal, whether you're running on App Service, or whether you're running in Kubernetes. Now, I do also think that Kubernetes has its own Rbac, but I'm not a Kubernetes expert, so please correct me there. Also, the Azure Rbac configuration settings, what can you do with Azure resources is not the same as the Azure AD Rbac that we're talking today. So not to be confused. If you are a contributor to your Azure Portal, it's not the same as having roles inside your application. Yeah, we're misusing or reusing the term Rbac. So yeah, when we talk about Rbac in Azure, it's different to the Rbac in Azure AD. So just a clarification. Yeah, I hope that helps. No problem. Okay. Rebecca, do you have anything else before we kick off the workshop?
No, I'm good.
No,
I'll see you later.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this.
Rebecca will be at the background if you have any questions, and she will be answering comments over there. And then So we'll probably come back to say goodbye to everyone and ask you to fill in the surveys. So please fill in the surveys because it's important to us and her to make sure that everyone is getting what they deserve. And if not, then leave us your feedback. This time, I think we all even offer you the opportunity to provide some feedback. So we improved our surveys. Yeah. There you go.
Newer, better survey.
Newer, better surveys for newer, better workshops. How about that? Okie dokie. Let's get some coding run. Can we use these roles, users, and groups in notification hub tags to get user-specific notifications sent? No, you will have to code for it. So do you want me on the left or on the right? Let me see. Let's change the visualization there. Perfect. We are here. How long will the stream be? I think it's about an hour and a half. If we blast through it, if you have any questions, then we can obviously stop and talk about them. So it depends. I mean, we have up to 2 hours to complete the workshop, but it's not too much to talk there. So it should be fairly easy. Now, going back to Rocklane's question, you will have to code around your notification hubs to provide that kind of information. Roles and users are not propagated to notification hubs from Azure AD, so I'm afraid that won't work. So you need some different way to, like, you'll need to add some information into your notifications so that you can collect that information at the destination and accordingly work with that information in your app. Yeah, sorry, Rocklane, it's not embedded in there. Hey everyone, so we are about to kick off. This link, by the way, will get you a free Azure AD tenant if you haven't had one, or if it's the first time that you're joining the workshop, then you can set an Azure AD tenant so you can follow along with what we do today. If you've already been here before, then you should probably have an Azure AD tenant already, and we're good to rock and roll. And for today, as I said before, we're going to be looking into users, groups, and roles. So the link for that, I'm just going to add it in the chat so everybody can jump into that straight away. Where can I get joining on Discord? Just hit the link I put above. So it's ak.ms Discord. Just do bang Discord on the chat and you'll see the information. You've been trying to join every week and you can't. Okay, just hit me. Otherwise, just if you have any questions, you can also ask staff on the 425 show at Microsoft.com. This is another channel for you to reach out to us directly. Me and JP are there to help you out. If you can't get us on Discord, then email also works for any questions. Okay. So I hope everybody can see that. We're looking at role-based access control, Rbac, which should not be confused with the Azure Rbac. You know, the Azure Resources Rbac, contributor, owner, or custom roles, which are available to your Azure tenant. The Azure AD Rbac information is, in effect, a mechanism to provide permissions or describing what a user can do in a specific application. And for that, we can use groups or roles to define them. And we'll discuss both options today. We'll also look at why you should be using roles over groups. Up until this point, Azure AD has been very big on group management and group permissions, but moving forward, moving to the cloud era, we want people to use the roles instead of groups. They're easier to work with, they're more human readable, and they're scaling better than just groups. So even though we'll be discussing both options today, the recommended way from our team and from the Azure AD division in general is to use roles for role-based management. And I know that B2C does not have role-based access control, but we have worked on an extension to allow you to do that, a totally separate system. For this workshop, you need some basic understanding of ASP.NET and in fact ASP.NET MVC. If you haven't done them before, if you haven't used MVC before, don't fret. It's not too hard to get started with. Even if it's your first time doing it, all you have to do is just install the .NET 5 tool or the .NET 5 language or framework. So if you've never done this before, if you search for .NET, you can hit this, and then from here you can go into downloads, and we recommend that you grab the .NET 5 branch, download the one for you. By the way, it is available for any platform and any language, and we will be using VS Code as well for our code editor. You don't have to use VS Code, but if you want to use that one, then perfect. Just go into Visual Studio Code or VS Code download and grab the latest download from there. Again, you'll see it's available on any operating system. But if you want to use Notepad, if you want to use some other text editing tool, then that's absolutely fine. As long as you have .NET 5 installed, you can compile and run your application. We don't need anything else for today's workshop. So basic understanding of MVC, even if you don't have that one, the workshop is pretty straightforward, and I will be doing it with you as well. You don't have to worry about finding where things should go, and I will be explaining things along the way, and feel free to ask questions. And finally, as we said, some experience with Visual Studio Code and access to a Microsoft 365 tenant. I have already said that you can grab a free Microsoft 365 tenant at the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. All free for you. Available for eternity. Just go ahead and spin it up. Okay, introduction. Let's go for it. So role-based access control is a mechanism for enforcing authorization. So we said there are two components with identity. The first one is authentication, explaining or finding what the user, who the user is. Right? You come into my website, you need to sign in and access some secure resources. I need to know who you are, right? And I need to, with that information, once you sign in, then I can provide you with a customized experience. But on top of that, I can also find out what you can do. And the what you can do component is the authorization bit. As a friend of ours said before, authentication and authorization are who you are, or who's your daddy and what can he do. Maybe I don't want to know, don't want you to know who I am. Sure. I mean, if you can provide some fake information, if you're signing in for the first time onto my site using, say, B2C, Bold Bearded Builder doesn't want me to know who he is. And then if that's the case, then I can provide you with a customized experience, and I can provide you with access to my secure resources. So it's totally up to you whether you want to sign up for my awesome website. But if you don't want to sign up, and if you don't want to have access to it, then I'm afraid this is like a standoff, right? So his new email is fully haired, clean shaven destructor at Gmail. This means that, you totally threw me off there. I have no idea who you are. My dad is root and he can do anything you want. Obviously, if you sign in users with admin permissions to your apps, we'll look at the admin roles, for example, then they have more information and they have more capabilities, but you have to code around those as well. Just because you belong to a role, it does not mean that you automatically get access to everything in the application itself. So you could be an admin inside Azure AD, but that doesn't mean that you're an admin in the custom app that we're developing. And that's the whole point of having two different systems to provide that capability. Roles are very specific to an application as well, whereas groups are available throughout the whole tenant. So again, different ways to provide fine-tune access to the application itself. Incognito mode, why not? Right, so basic knowledge of OAuth technology and authentication flows, probably not, because we're not going to cover that one too much. If you want to have an in-depth knowledge of flows and authorization code and OAuth 2, we did a fantastic series on MS Learn, and we covered that there. So let me find you the link for that. So if I head out to our YouTube channel for the 45 show and I go into my videos, we have a whole playlist of covering the fundamentals of OAuth and OpenID Connect. So that playlist, I will make it available to you here. Dun, dun, dun. We have about 9 episodes there for you, going from what is identity all the way to building your first application. And the link for that, I will just put on the chat now. Fundamentals, my friends, fundamentals. We don't need them for now, but it is something that you can always go back and look at. This playlist provides everything. And for this one, we'll be creating an ASP.NET web application using MVC, the Model View Controller framework. And then we will use security groups to add them to the token. We'll add security groups into our token, and then we will use it within the application to provide some fine-tuned access to our solution. And we'll do all that with a developer tenant, so you don't have to worry about existing groups and what have you. We'll create everything from scratch. So let's get started. So role-based, we talked about that. We need to provide you with some authorization capabilities, and Rbac is the most popular mechanism, not the only one, but it is the most common one. Obviously, you don't want to write your own code, and depending on the framework that you use, like ASP.NET has it built in. Other frameworks probably have libraries to do that, for example, in Node, but there are cases where you may have to roll out your own code. In effect, you will have to look into the token that is provided to you from the identity system, open the claims, and look into what roles or groups have been propagated down in order for you to code accordingly. So in ASP.NET, you can do it in one line of code, but in other frameworks, it may not be as easy. Hence the reason why I love ASP.NET so much. And the whole point there is that developers don't have to do too much work when it comes to authorization. The whole point is that the application will grant users the ability to do specific tasks based on the groups that they belong to or the roles that have been granted to them. Again, super easy. And we configure all that in one central place. Usually developers don't have to do that. The nice thing is that you probably go to your IT admin and say, we need a specific role for this application, or we need a specific group of users to be able to access this application, and they will enforce it. Now, on top of that, you also have multi-factor authentication and conditional access, which provide even more control on who and when can access your application. And because in Azure AD, all the users are managed in one central location, you can have your admins do all that, and you as a developer only care about the implementation. So in Azure AD, we'll look at how we can add or delete users, how we can create new user groups, and how we can restrict access. That's very important. As you can see here, we have the options to provide access to our application, our custom app, to only our organizational users, like people that belong to Microsoft or people that only belong to your company at contoso.com or wherever you work. Or you can also provide access to people that work outside your organization as well using external identities, and also the ability to have a multi-tenanted app. So if you're developing a SaaS solution, like let's say GitHub, right? GitHub is a multi, it's a SaaS solution, or Office is a SaaS solution. Office is running at Microsoft, the Office Online is running at Microsoft servers, but anyone with an Office license can sign into their Office 365 tenants and have their own emails, their own set of documents and whatever that are licensed to their company at contoso.com. Roles are a set of permissions and group are a set of identities. Please do not merge roles and groups, I beg you. That's a very good point. Yes, thank you. Although you can merge groups and roles by assigning a group to a role, so you can still do role-based access control, you can do role-based authorization, but instead of assigning individual users every time to that role, which can be tedious, especially for a large organization, you can actually assign groups to those roles. So I think what our friend here is trying to say is that I suspect that in your code, you shouldn't be doing, yeah, SharePoint is a bit of a mess. I agree. But then SharePoint is a bit of an extreme. However, what I'm saying is that in your code, you don't want to have tokens that include both roles and groups, especially with the limitations that come with the groups. I will discuss about the group propagation and the upper limits and what have you. Can you say a few words about the difference between roles and groups and when the use of it makes more sense similarly? Yes, please don't use groups. How about that? So groups are security groups or distribution groups, and no, I'm just kidding. You can still use groups, right? We don't say don't use groups, but the problem is that the groups the information for groups doesn't propagate well in your tokens. There's also an upper limit. So for large organizations like Microsoft, where I can belong to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of groups, It means that if I request those groups in the no, JP has not left the show. JP is off today, and also had to do. And even though he's off, he also had to do an important presentation to our division. So he's, in other words, incapacitated. But he'll be back with us on Friday when we do our show. So he decided to let me drive solo. Hopefully, I'm doing a good job because I think people are missing JP. So groups are good, but the information that you get in your token for groups is not as readable. So you end up with a GUID. And if you need to find the group name, then you need to do another call into the graph to say, I want to get the name of that group. So all you get is a GUID that doesn't really tell you much about the groups that the user belongs to. The other problem with groups is the upper limit of groups that we allow you to propagate down with the token. And since I work in a large organization, in most cases, all I get is a link to the graph to say, this is where you can find all the groups that the user belongs to. So as a developer now, you have to code around this limitation. You have to think about the challenge of the token comes down, it gives me a link to all the groups that the user belongs to, so I need to go and get them. In SAML tokens, you only get 4 groups. In ID tokens, I think you get 250 groups, which is a big number, but at the same time, we need to keep the tokens small, and using groups is not ideal. So the challenge there is that groups are not as user-friendly or developer-friendly, if you want to call it. And because that information doesn't propagate well, we try to avoid them. Also, they're fairly arcane in terms of authentication and authorization. So we prefer to guide developers to role-based access, where if you define a role, an application role, you can assign as many groups as you want, and then your code can be clever enough to just look at the roles. So you can say, if this user, which is part of a specific group, belongs to that role, then they can easily access that. Thanks, that makes a lot of sense. You're welcome. Roles at the enterprise level. Well, groups are the enterprise level, and then you can enable the role, so you can enable the requirement for a user to belong to a role in order to access an application. And that is very important because you don't want information to be leaking. We had scenarios in the past where users that belong to an organization were able to access financial data in financial apps because there was no restriction on role access control. So to put it bluntly, let's say your HR system should be only accessed by people that belong into the HR role. But if you don't enforce that restriction at the application level to say only people with this role or only people assigned to the role can access the solution, it means that I could go and find that in our internal intranet app and then try to sign in. And because there's no restriction, I can see everybody's HR data, right? Which is crazy. So there is a way to enforce it at the enterprise level, but the app roles are defined at the app registration level. And we will go through that experience as well. Yes, but I agree with our friend on the Microsoft developer that you should not be mixing groups and roles. Yes, roles define what the users can do, not who the user is. That is correct. Are roles available for B2C apps? They're not, Hector, but the good news is that JP, crud, yeah. So roles are not available for B2C, but we are building an extension, and JP is extremely proud. If you go to our Discord channel, you'll see that we actually have a custom solution for role-based access in B2C, including an admin UI to manage and assign roles, and then code to propagate that information down to your tokens. So we're plugging the gap there. How about that? We're plugging the gap. And again, I love these questions. Thanks very much for everyone for asking these. I know that authorization is a very sensitive subject. Please open up a debate forum and let's all chime in. Yeah, on Discord, please jump in on our Discord channel and let's have a chat. We can either have a separate solution, or a separate channel to discuss that, or you can use a general channel to bring your thoughts and ideas. Yes. Oh, sorry. The Discord bank does not work on the Microsoft developer, so let me just add the link there for you. Exagate. Exagate IO. Man, it's hard to always pronounce these names. You guys are so clever finding out clever names, and then they always trip me up. Okay. All right, I like that. Executable. Nice. So following down with the course over here, obviously, it shows you how to go and create these, which will be part of the exercise itself on how to configure them. Now, you'll notice that we have the user assignment required down here. That's very important. This is the one that we've been discussing, and this is what Hector, I don't think it was Hector, it was Daryl. Well, let me see. Where was that question asked? Maybe that's something I covered myself. So the user assignment required is very important. By default is off, which means that even though you have roles, anyone that is part of that tenant has access to your application. You want to make sure that you restrict that, especially if you're dealing with sensitive information. So turning that on will do that, and then you need to assign groups and roles to the information. And then we'll use the, we need an app registration, obviously, to configure the code and allow access to a specific web app. This is what it says here. And the Azure AD registration, that's boilerplate stuff. We'll do them as part of the exercise, so no need to explain this here. If you are capturing tokens for other APIs, you also need a client secret. And if you're not using the implicit flow, which is the default for now for .NET Core, then you don't need a client secret. But if you're not using implicit flow, if you are using authorization code with Pixie, then the client secret is required as well to allow you to authenticate, because we need to secure that. The Azure AD configuration, which comes as part of the Bootstrap, the .NET New experience, will provide you with this information over here, sans the client secret. So we will see that as we develop our application. And then as part of the first exercise, we will actually go and grab the claims from the token, and those claims will map to groups, which we will configure to come down as claims. By default, groups will not come down with your token. So you need to configure your token to propagate that information down in your ID token. Just so you're aware, it's not a default experience. So let's go and hit our first exercise here. And for that, we need to start at the Azure Portal. So let me close this one and close this one. I think I have my Azure AD Portal already in place. Let's put them on the side. Whoa, too many windows here. And I'll make this bigger. Okay, so if you want to sign into your Azure AD Portal, you can either go to azure.portal.com or ad.portal.azure.com. And you can either provide the tenant name or the tenant ID if you know either, or if you don't know any of them, you can just go like that, and then it will work out which one you need to sign in. Now I'm already signed in, hence the reason why I know, or it knows where to go for my stuff. And then once you come into the portal, the first thing you need to hit is the Azure AD. You can extend that Azure Active Directory, so we can go straight into our Azure Active Directory. And that's what it says here. So now we need to create a new registration. So under app registrations. Hey, hi Caprino, hope you're good. Are you going to show us how to make groups propagate within the token? Yes, we are. That's part of this exercise over here. So please follow along as we go through and ask your questions. We need to create a new registration. We'll name it user group role. Okay, user group role. Will support only users in this directory. So it's a single tenant app. And then we just need to register. There you go. Microsoft Developer, can you please show us how to add social logins on Azure AD? This is part of the external identities. I can point you to a link, but we can't do it today as part of this. So you can have external accounts or external identities being guests to your tenant. And when you create new users, you can also invite users outside your organization to join with a specific subset of permissions. So guest accounts in effect. But By default, your Azure AD accounts will be managed by your IT team, and you need to be part of the org to work with certain stuff. Inviting and creating new users with external identities, it's a separate kind of subject. So either hit me on Discord, I can point you to the links, or send an email to the 45show@microsoft.com and I can help you with that. But let's try to stay on the scope because we have limited time. Hope that helps. Yeah, no problem. Just look for Azure AD external identities. That's the terminology we have right now for these things. So now that we have our app registration, we need to say what kind of app we're going to use to sign in the users. What is our intent? And because we're using ASP.NET, we are going to add a web platform. In effect, a server-side application that renders on a server, and it's a confidential client. Yeah, that guest term helped guide me, no problem. Okay, so here we need to say what the redirect URI will be. This is where the authorization code will come back. And because we're using ASP.NET Core by default, and we're running on Kestrel, so we're not using IIS, the default port is 5001 for HTTPS, and 5000 if you're running on non-HTTPS, but please run HTTPS by default. It's free and it's available to you, especially for the developer tenant. And the sign out or the logout URL doesn't matter as much unless you want to do single sign out, so we can leave it there. Then we're going to hit the ID token. As I said, by default we're using the implicit grant, so right now it's not the most secure option, but we are working on defaulting to the authorization code with PKC, the proof key for code exchange, which means that you don't have to compromise your security. But for now, let's follow the example here. If you want information on how to configure your ASP.NET Core apps or ASP.NET 5 apps with authorization code, ping me. It's one line of code that you need to configure. So with that, let's press configure. And then that's all we need from an authentication perspective, right? Now, next we need to create some code. So if we switch back to our terminal up here, let's create a new web app. So remember we talked about MVC, so we're using MVC, not the Azure Pages. So .NET new. Is that big enough? Can everybody see it, or should I make it bigger? Interesting. Oh, everything froze. Oh no. Okay, it's unfrozen now. Trying to make it bigger so everybody can see that what we're doing. Okay, so .NET new MVC for our MVC. Okay, cool. Thank you. I can't pronounce that. You need to tell us. Saigensi? Man, people are like, no, he's ruined the name. I'm out. Make it bigger. Okay, thank you. Thank you, love code Miko. We'll make it bigger. Is that big enough? I hope it is. And then we'll do dash authentication or auth single org, and then we'll say O for output sig. Okay, thanks buddy. Then we say O for output, or you can use N for name. They both have the same effect. The output will be which folder do you want your code to end up with, and we'll use the user group role name. So that will be the directory where our code will end up. So this is creating our bootstrapped ASP.NET MVC application. And now make sure you change directory to that. So cd user group role, and then I can say code dot. Notice down here it says in the console you need to run the .NET add package, but when this workshop was written, the template did not include those packages. So I will show you how they are already there, and you don't need to run these two commands. So with code dot, it will open the VS Code for us, VS Code ID for us. So if I pin this to the side and hide certain things, you should be able to see it better. So now what we're looking at is the workshop down here. And then yes, make sure you restore the settings and configure Visual Studio Code to run your application. If we look into the project, the CS project file, you will notice that Microsoft Identity and Microsoft Identity, Web and Web.ui are there for us. You don't need to install them separately. App settings. Let's go to the app settings. That's the next step. And we need to configure our app settings. Remember how I said this information will be available to you to configure. Login, that can stay the same. We don't change that. The qualified domain needs to change. So here we have cmatscas.onmicrosoft.com, and I will show you where to get that information from your Azure AD tenant. So if we go into our Azure AD, and if we go to overview, no, we can go here, and at the overview, you see that this is the primary domain over here. So you can grab it from there. It will also be up here as well. Usually it is up here, but I think the fact that I have zoomed in and I have half the screen doesn't work as well. Hey BSD guy, thanks for joining us. And then let's go back to our app registration because we need that one now. We need to get that information. So click here, and then it was groups and roles. By the way, if you're using Azure masking extension, it is not working. I'm not for this one. I'm not masking it. But you're right. Although the tenant ID is not sensitive. Is sign-in OIDC hard-coded into the ASP.NET Core? It is indeed, yes. It's part of the Microsoft.ident.web, which means that if you don't provide that endpoint, it will break. I think there's a way to override that in the startup.cs, but there's no point because this is an endpoint that is expecting the authorization code and tokens to arrive. So I don't see why you would need to use it. It is hard-coded, by the way, yes. So it was, you know what, the easiest way to find it now is by filtering. So we can say when was the last day that we worked. So there you are. Now we need to go and grab the information. Application ID, back to our VS Code. We need the application ID here. Oh, sorry, client ID, application ID is the same. So there, and then the tenant ID, I don't know it by heart. If it was JP, he will probably know his tenant ID by heart. Don't know how this guy does it, but he's that good. So our tenant ID here. And a code Z12, thanks for joining us. So make sure you save. Visual Studio Code does not save by default. So that's important. And we need to update the user experience. So now it says locate and open the view home index.cshtml. So in the views home index.cshtml, and add the following code at the end of the line. Okay, let's copy that from here, easy to copy, and we'll paste it below here. Let's see what the code does. So the first thing that it's trying to do is look at the user identity. So if you are authenticated already, brilliant. Let me show you something in the UI. So it expects the user to be authenticated, otherwise it will not render anything to the endpoint, to the client side code. And in here we have a table, and then we'll loop through the claims that come into the ID token, and we will dump them into the page. Nothing too complicated other than this is the key here, line 10 is the one that does the hard work. Okay, so now we just need to run the application. If it's the very first time that you ever run a .NET Core application, then you need to run the first bit, which is .NET Dev Search HTTPS and Trust. This will create a developer HTTPS SSL certificate for your HTTPS endpoint, so you don't have to create one by hand, and you don't have to use OpenSSL. It will do it for you, and it will allow you to run at the HTTPS endpoint at port 5001. But if it's not the first time you run it, just run .NET build just to make sure that the code is working. Make sure you save up there, and then let's click on this one, the giant. Let's clear the screen here, and let's say .NET build to build the code. By the way, you don't have to run .NET build, because .NET run, when you run it from your command line, it will do both build and a run. Now, nice here, we don't have any errors, so we can actually run it. I think that's the next command that we have to do. Yeah, .NET run. Let's do this. As our BSD guy friend says, let's do this. .NET run. Building and running. So it's listening at port 5001. Let's grab that port. Let's put it up here in our browser window. So many browser windows now. And let's see what we see. the first thing that we'll try to prompt us to do is to authenticate. And I will come back to the code for that. We've seen this code before, by the way, so it shouldn't be something new to you. Oh no, I've signed in with the wrong account. Obviously, I was trying to sign in outside my tenant. Okay, so now it says permission required. It's the first time we're accessing this app, and it asks me to consent. And we talked about consent before. So I will accept this, and then it should prompt me to this home page. It will take me to the home page. And remember how we added code and said, if I am authenticated, which I have to be to access the app anyway, then show me the claims of my token. You see that we don't have too much information here. The ID token by default brings limited information down. So next task will be to configure this. Okay. So now with that, we have our basic app running. This will be the base for the rest of the workshop. We're not going to be doing any new .NET news. We will be building on top of that. So let's go and test our knowledge and see how well we understand what we talked about so far. Let me make this big. Test your knowledge and take the test with me. I want to see what you guys think here. So how can you restrict your app to only allow specific users to sign in and use it with Microsoft Identity? Enable the user assignment required setting on the app in the Azure AD Admin Center and assign a specific user or users to the app. Disable the allow all users to sign in setting on the app in the Azure AD Admin Center and assign specific users to the app. Remove the everyone group from the list of users allowed to sign in to the Azure AD app and assign specific users to the app. Couple of seconds for you to decide. I'll go with mine, you go with yours. And what elements are required to create, configure, or collect when registering an app in the Azure AD tenant for use with an ASP.NET Core web app? In effect, what did we have to do inside the Azure AD portal to create a new app registration for ASP.NET Core app? And here it says tenant ID, application secret, and the redirect URI. Application ID, application secret, and the redirect URI, or application ID, tenant ID, and the application secret. Let me know what you think, and I will tell you what I think. And let's do this. Dun, dun, dun. Check your answers. Easy peasy. And you might say, well, we didn't configure a secret. And you're right. We didn't configure a secret because we're using implicit flow and we're not calling another API. But technically, there should be one because we should be using authorization code just to confuse matters more. Hey, Brownie what's up? All good. Can you please provide the link to this learning resource? Absolutely, my friend. Yes, I apologize for not sending it before. So we are, this is the one. So copy link, and I will provide it here. And I will provide it on the other window as well, in case you haven't been following along. Okay, so now we're talking about security groups, right? We talked about security groups and securing our apps with Microsoft Identity. We've done the first part, securing our apps, and now we need to configure our groups. So up until this point, to configure groups, and even now, to configure the groups, you actually have to mess with the, unfortunately, with the actual manifest of the application, and I will show you how to do that. But there's no UI to configure your groups. So we'll do it through the app manifest, which is a little bit of XML code, and then we will change the code to look into these claims, to look into the groups and say, well, if the user belongs to that group, this beautifully crafted GUI, as you can see here, then I will allow access, or I will do some business logic in my application. So just give me a second. Okay. And remember how we said that groups are not as easy to work with? Well, that's one of the points that proves what I said. Working with GUIDs is not as easy. There is a way to propagate the names for certain groups, but again, it's not recommended to use groups in any way. So I would rather you use roles and avoid the workarounds rather than trying to use groups and have this experience over here. But regardless, if you are restricted to groups only and your IT team does not support roles yet, then this is the way to add the authorization based on groups inside ASP.NET. And as you can see, it's a one-liner. This is fantastic. Even though groups are not perfect, and you have to map that GUI to something that means something to you as a developer. I don't know, a giant spreadsheet with all that information. The one-liner makes your life so much easier. You just say here, this endpoint needs to be secured based on a group that has this GUID. And as long as a user is part of that group, then they will be able to access that endpoint. Or you'll be able to render something in the UI based on the fact that the user belongs to that group. Something very important over here. Now, in the past, I've done this and it was awful. You don't want to render anything in this solution. You don't want to render anything in your UI, not so render something that should be protected by certain conditions. In this instance, we're saying the user needs to belong to a specific group in order for them to be able to see that UI. What I've done in the past was I would hide the element from the UI based on that permission. Hiding means that somebody can actually open the source of your page and see that endpoint. So even though they're not an admin, they could still be able to access the admin portal just by working out that. So there are layers of security that you need to implement here. First of all, do not render links or accesses or links that access sensitive information to your site based on user permissions. Don't render that. So you say if they're not an admin, they should not be able to even see the admin links anywhere in the code. And then secondly, or thirdly, because there will be layers, as we said, if somebody tries to access that admin endpoint, you still need to check that they have the right permissions to do that. They're in the right roles. Yes, obscurity is not security. You're absolutely right. Learning from my mistakes it's a great way for you to not do them. So do not render anything on the web UI. And just because you're not rendering, it doesn't mean that somebody won't try to do /admin to go to a specific part of your website. There are bots out there that will try to find these well-known endpoints on any website in hope that there's weak security or no security to try to take access to sensitive information or get access to sensitive information. So this is one of the many ways or many things that you need to do in your application to protect access to sensitive information. Okay, summary. So we talked about groups and how they should be implemented on Azure AD and our tenants. So let's go. Next exercise, utilizing groups. So we need to update the application registration to use groups, but we don't have any groups. I don't think I have any groups, by the way, on my test tenant. I don't think that the test tenants come with groups. So maybe we need to create a test group to configure something there, right? So let me see, does it, no, I don't think it provides any groups here. So we need to go and create a group. So please sign into your test tenant like I will do now. And then let's go into, let's go to the root of our AD tenant, and then let's go into our groups. Yeah, you see I don't have any decent groups. I've got the all company and I've got CMatica. So let's create a new group here. It should be a security group. What should we name it? So let's name it Reactor 5. This is a group for our workshop. Azure AD roles can be assigned to the groups. Yes, why not? Although we don't need to for this one. Assigned. No owners, no members. Let's select a couple of members here. I will add myself. Select that one, but you can also add more. So you can have Adele and Alex. And let's put, so these are all test users that you get for free with your Microsoft 365 tenant. So it's all fun. And we can select them and then create. Creating a group to which Azure AD roles can be assigned cannot be changed later. Let's leave it off for now. That's the default anyway. Members, okay. Owners, let's make me an owner just in case I need to change something here. There's only one Christos in my tenant. There can only be one. And let's create that. Oh, some members failed to be assigned to it. Why? Oh, wow. Can take up to 30 seconds, okay. Let's give it some time. Can I wait? There you go. 3 users. Which one was unable to? So members. Okay, I'm in. As long as I'm in, I'm good. Right. So now that we have the group, Reactor 5. Remember that, right? Overview. That's the name, I think. Reactor 5. That's the object ID which we'll need to use in a bit. In fact, let's copy that into Notepad because we'll need it anyway in a little bit for our code. But I think later in the workshop we'll ask us to do that. So here we need to update our application. So let's go back to, let's put it on the side. Let's come here to our tenant. Let's find the ones that we were just using for the first workshop. Again, I like to use the dates because that's the easiest way to get to my app. And now we need to open the manifest. So the manifest can be found down here. The manifest, by the way, it's a full JSON representation of our app registration. It also has some extra information that are not available in the UI, hence the reason why we have to do it here. So the first thing that we need to do is group claims, group membership claims, change it to security group. So that can be found on line 12. And we need to put quotes around it. Just make sure you have your quotes there. There's no IntelliSense, so please be aware that you have to keep everything clean. And if you make a mistake or a typo or you forget a comma or whatever, then it will break your manifest. In fact, I don't think it will save if you have a mistake. And then we need to update the app manifest with the optional claims. So I will copy just that. Or we might have to add it. Yeah, it should be false, so we need to add this information here. So just the ID token. And then optional claims, you'll see down here it says empty. We need to copy the whole thing. Okay, I will copy the whole thing just to be on the safe side. And then here we will replace line 29 with what we got. And then you also need to make sure you add a comma at the end. Otherwise our XML, our JSON will be broken. XML. And indentation doesn't work, so let's fix that. Let's stay clean. I think that should be indented one more time. There. Good. Let's save again. And that, in effect, this one will now take any groups that I belong to and add them to the token. And we need to extend the application to the authorized tag. There's an authorized tag that goes into either at the controller level or the controller action level that allows us to configure security. Create a product viewer group. Oh, it does say to create one. I forgot about that. It's fine. Let's go and create one anyway, right? Let's do that. Let's do this as part of the exercise. So in the Azure Active Directory, find the groups. Okay, let's do it again. Groups. And let's create a new group. And it will be security, and we'll name it product viewers. Okay. And then description will be allow users to view products, obviously. Membership types assigned, and owners. Let's select my account again. You should select your account. There. Select that, and then for members, select the user account you selected as a group owner. You can also optionally add more, like we did before. The one and only user. Okay, let's create this one. And now let's copy this ID rather than the other ID. Okay. Let's put it on our OneNote. Just use something that you can store it temporarily. This is not secure information, so it doesn't matter if I show it or not. It's not a secret. And now we need to go and change the code. Okay, let's open up VS Code. So we need to create a new model called category.cs. So let's go into our models and let's do category.cs and add this here. Perfect. Save your file. Then in the model folder, we need to create a new product.cs file or class. And let's save this one as well. And next we need to add a new NuGet package. This NuGet package called Bogus allows you to create random data to populate your whatever you need to populate. Usually in this instance we'll be populating something in memory so we can play around with it, but Bogus is a fantastic tool if you want to do some unit testing or integration testing and you need some data very quickly. So with Bogus, it's one of the main libraries by the way, but it's open source and it works great, and I've used it in the past as well for projects. So let's stop the application from running and let's no, I don't want to paste that, I want to paste this. There you go. Make sure you run at the right level. You should be inside your directory. So it downloads the NuGet package for us. Let's clear the command line here, there. And now we're going to create a new helper class to allow us to populate some data so we can see it in the code. So copy this and add the Visual Studio Code in the root folder, create a sample data.cs. So here, let's do here. Let's do it's called sample data.cs. And once we finish the exercise, we'll take a quick break. So I know that it's been an hour. We're going strong, but we'll take a break as well just to get some fresh air, stretch our legs, grab some water, use the toilet if you need to. Is that too much information for the stream? Okay, now we have the helper class to add the data, but we need something to bootstrap it or somewhere to bootstrap that. So inside our startup.cs, there's no better place than this. We need to go into our configure services, and at the very bottom, we need to add the this information over here. Why is that a space? Or is it just me? Huh. This one is in the wrong place. Huh. We have an extra, we're missing a space in our tab or a tab. This one will actually bootstrap our data, so when we call sample data, whatever, we can get the information inside our code in one of our controllers. So now let's add a controller and view for products. Inside our controllers, let's create a products controller.cs. Controllers, products controller.cs. And in here, we're going to paste our code. And just to go quickly over the code and see what happens here, we have the authorized tag, which expects a role. Now in this instance, the role needs to be our ID, the GUID that we copied before for our group, because we're still doing groups-based authorization. So let's paste the GUID here. And then in the product controller, we are injecting our data object, the sample data that we created before. And then in the index, we're just returning the raw data that we have in that sample data set. So let's save this one. I think we need to create a view as well to see all these beautiful things. Now replace this thing with the value copied from the group ID. Replace the group ID. And then in the products, in the folder called views, add a product. Add a new folder. Oh, we need a folder. Okay. Oh yeah, because under there will be an index.cshtml. So views, new folder. It's called products. And under there, we need to add an index.cshtml file. This will be our view, index.cshtml. And let's look at this file over here and see what it does. Let's save this one first. So here we're expecting the data to be passed in, and that'll be a model of products which we created before. And in here we'll create a table, and we will loop through the items in our model to display them. But you can't get this page unless you're authorized and unless you're part of the right group. And that group is the one that we defined via the GUID. Here. That's the magic line over here. I can't get to this point if I'm not part of that group. So with that information there, we need to also add a link to that page. So if we go into the shared layout, let's copy that. In the layout is where we actually define our navigation. So down here we have there's links to. Let's close that. Let's see where the home and so this is for index home privacy. Right below here in the li, we will add that. Alt Shift F or Shift Alt F. Do I need to save first? Oh, there you go. Fix it. So S. So in here we'll have the home and I think it's a home, and then you have privacy, and then right next to it we'll add one more. Oh, check this out. We need to update the GUID again. So let's grab this, and we'll say if the user is part of the right group, then please display the products page, the products link. It's very important here because even though we don't have a role, the group will propagate down as a role because that's what we configured in the app registration. So if I didn't highlight that before, apologies, but in the configuration here, in this bit, what we say is that in my ID token, I want you to add my groups or the groups that the user belongs to, but I want you to emit them as roles. So we're still doing Rbac inside our code, but instead of using roles per se, we're actually using groups, which will be emitted as roles. That's important. That's why I didn't have to mention anything about groups inside my code. Okay, I think that's all we need. Is that all we need? Now we have we've done that, on the views, we've added the link, and now we're at the point that we can actually run it. Let's see. Make sure you save everything. So as you can see up here, I haven't saved, so I need to save this one. And then I need to close the files I don't need, so I don't need that, I don't need that, I need that. I don't need any of them. I don't need you. Okay, now let's go here. We're in the right solution. So .NET. Yeah, we're welcome, Daryl. It's important to understand what's happening here, and I think I missed it before, so good thing I remember to go back. So .NET run, more or less. Again, you don't have to run the trust. We already trusted the certificate from the previous exercise. You don't need to build because run will build and run the application as well. So let's skip straight to the point, which is show me the code. Show me the app. It's building, it's thinking about it. Okay, no errors, which is a good sign. So now we just need to hit the localhost 5000. Oh, very important. And I think, wait, we just configured them. Why can we not see them? If we go back into the workshop, which should be here. Okay. Now it will say, because you have already logged in and because you already have an ID token, the application is not going to prompt you to sign in. Obviously, we haven't signed out yet. It will also not propagate the latest information we added to our manifest. So we need to sign out and sign in again in order for us to get the latest information. So let's go and do that. In your application, just press sign out, but do not complete the full sign out. You don't want to go back to Azure AD and sign out. So what we've done just now is destroy the auth cookie that we have in our application, but we don't want to sign out totally. So what we'll do is just go back into our application. You like spaghetti? I like spaghetti too, but it's too early in the morning to think about food just now. If it is time for you to have your dinner or lunch, feel free to bring your food over, and then we can do a lunch and learn or dinner and learn. So localhost 5001. See, now it asks me to authenticate again, but I won't have to go to Azure AD. And check this out. We have the groups coming down. So you see how we have additional roles down here? These are new just because we configure the, hey, map my groups to my token as roles and pass them down the ID token. And now if I were to click on the products that we just created, I have access because I'm part of that group. Awesome. This is all working. Let's go and answer the questions, and then we'll take a very quick 3-minute break so everybody can get some fresh air and stretch their legs. So test your knowledge. How can users be added to a security group? Users can be manually added to the group by using Azure AD Admin Portal, Admin Center. Users can search and apply to join groups, and these groups owners will have to review and approve or reject the claim to join the group. Users can also search and join groups automatically if the groups are configured correctly, which is something that we do a lot at Microsoft because we have so many groups, or all of the above. So let me know what you think. And then to support security groups in a custom ASP.NET app that uses MSAL and the OpenID Connect middleware, you must do one of the following things. Set the OpenID Connect middleware to role claim type property equals to group. Set the role claim type on the OpenID Connect middleware to security groups. And set the apps manifest property group membership claims to security groups and the OpenID Connect middleware role claim type property to groups. Now you'll notice that there is something here weird with regards to the ASP.NET middleware. We didn't have to configure anything in the middleware for things to work out of the box. So these questions are slightly behind the current times, which means that the most appropriate answer here will be the third one, even though we didn't have to configure anything in our ASP.NET application. So if you're scratching your head about that, then just be aware that things have moved on since the time that we did a workshop. In the past, when we didn't have Microsoft Identity.web, you did have to configure certain things yourselves for them to work accordingly. So just let you know. Let's check our answers. Boom, it's working. This is awesome. So we have one more exercise to do about roles, and that will be the second part. So for now, I would say let's take a 4-minute break. So 11:17 my time, or whatever time plus 4 minutes your end. I will see you back here for some more awesomeness, and we'll move to actually using proper roles this time. So stay back and I'll see you in a bit. up, what's up? We're back. Part 2. I hope everyone is refreshed and good to go. And now we're moving into the proper thing, which is roles. And I prefer roles so much more. I like them, they're easy to work with, and it doesn't require any code changes. That's the best bit, whether you're using groups or roles, because we configure them to come down as claims, role claims, right? They will be the same, but roles are easier to work with, and we'll see that in action. So, as we said before, we can use, let me just maximize this one since it's the new one. There you go. Since yeah, you're absolutely right, BSD. We got this. We got 40 minutes to go and do our exercise. Now, there's not much to say about roles. This is the more modern approach. You can assign both users and roles into the solution, and you can assign both users and groups to roles. And the nice thing about roles is that now we also provide you with a UI. You don't have to mess with the app manifest as you had to do in the past. And even though this exercise uses the app manifest to configure them, as you can see down here, which is not ideal and doesn't scale well and what have you, you can now actually do it in the UI. And in case you have a question, like how can I make this more enterprisey? How can we configure these things in code? Anything that you see in the app manifest is also available to configure via the graph. So if you create a solution, you can create a script that can go and configure the app roles. You can update app roles, you can assign app roles, you can assign users to app roles. All that is available to do programmatically as well. You don't have to use the UI. Obviously, it's easier to follow if we do it through the UI. And hence the reason why this workshop does not include advanced scripts with a graph. But if you're looking to take it further and say you want to create 10 apps with certain permissions, then this is the way to do it. So we configure the app roles down here in the app manifest or the UI, and they become available as part of your solution. And just a note here, you cannot have spaces in the display name, even though it is JSON, which is a bit weird, but it's probably an underlying restriction inside Azure AD and not part of the JSON rules, right? And then once you have your roles, the whole point of having roles is to assign users or groups to those roles. And we said, if you're heavily invested in groups right now, you don't have to scratch them and go from the beginning. You can actually take those groups and assign them to the roles, and therefore the same kind of propagation of permissions will happen through the roles, which is great. And there's a UI for assigning users to roles, which is fantastic. And then in our code, remember, we have to change the code here to use roles, and then we say which role we need to have, which is a lot more developer friendly or user friendly, because now I know I don't have to use Intuit Good and try to map it. I don't have restrictions in roles as well, so technically I can have 20 roles coming down, and then I can code accordingly to say, certain parts of my application should only be accessible by admins, whereas other parts can be accessible by viewers or people with less permissions. And this is what the code does here, more or less. And let's go and build it. Any questions about roles so far? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing too much into it. We assign users to roles, and then the ID token will contain these roles, and then we use these roles to code our application around those roles. So we're going to update the app registration first and foremost. Let's put it on the side, and let's bring up our app registration here. Okay. Now we need to go back into our app registration and remove the groups from the app manifest. So app registrations, again, to find your app, you can search by name, or you can be lazy like me and search by date. And so I only have one for today. It's easy to get there. Laziness sometimes is efficient, isn't it? Okay. Manifest, let's go back here. Remember, we said that we want group membership claims to include security groups, but now we don't want to do that anymore. So we're going to say null for this one without the quotes. There, make sure the comma is still there. And then for the app roles, rather than configuring them there, let's do a save. And before we do that, the optional claim should also be null. Nobody picked that up. Hope you guys are with me, following along. And if you're not, if you're watching on this this on YouTube, make sure you join our Discord. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitch at the 45 Show. Our whole point is to help you get up to speed with identity, whether it's fundamentals, whether it's more advanced scenarios, whether it's end-to-end scenarios. We're here to help you. All about identity and any platform, any language. Although today we're focusing on .NET and just Microsoft Identity Platform. Right. So optional claims are null. Let me change this one to remove that because that will break everything. And then I will be scratching my head why things are not working. Make sure you don't have any squiggles in your app manifest. And now, rather than doing this, right, we could do this if you want to, but I prefer to show you the nicer way, which is app roles. So here, I have spaces and display names that I have created in the UI, and it didn't break anything. Interesting. I don't know if that's changed recently. I mean, we could try it and break it if you want to, but then again, you will have to check them into, yeah. And is your ASP.NET authorization tag using spaces and it's working fine? If that's working end to end, then we're good to go. Right, so app roles, you can create new app roles here, right? So what does it say? It says allowed members, users, display name, product administrators. So let's do that. Let's say here, don't use spaces. It doesn't say don't use spaces. Interesting. Please remember IT admins do not give you this type of permission to register enterprise level applications. You're absolutely right. Yes. In most cases, you'll have to raise a request for somebody in your organization to go and create those roles and those groups and assign those users. And this should be managing both the onboarding and the removal of those permissions, which is very, very important, right? You're right though. We're actually using a test tenant over here. We're creating everything in the Microsoft 365 developer tenant that we created in the beginning, which gives us godlike permissions on the whole tenant. But it is part of this exercise, and it's nice to know how these things are configured. But thank you for highlighting this. Product administrators, then we need to say we want users or groups to have access to that. Then the value will be the same as the display name. And then for the description, we will use administrator role for product catalog. The nice thing is that we don't have to figure out what the GUID should be, because if you're actually adding these manually to the manifest, that new GUID over there, you know, in the angle brackets, you have to come up with a new GUID. It's not hard. There are tools like PowerShell. I think right below it says you can use PowerShell to create a new GUID, but you still have to go and find it. Anyway, so we have that. We've done the first one, so let's apply. We want this to be enabled, and then we need another role. And then in this instance, we're going to do users, but this is for viewers only. Only people that can view stuff. We don't want things to change. We don't want it to be able to change things. The value should be the same. The description is viewer only permissions down here. And then apply, and we're good to go. In case you're wondering, if we look at the manifest now, we're seeing exactly the same thing that we have in the code. We could have skipped the whole thing, but I know that it was a major requested thing to have a UI for managing app roles. So I want you to know that this is out of preview, it's GA, and it is available to you. If you still like to dabble with JSON, be my guest. You can use JSON as much as you want. Okay, let's move on. Assigning users to app roles. We need to jump into the enterprise solution. So in the enterprise app, that corresponds to this app registration. And this is, I know this is slightly confusing, but the app registration is your base class or your class, and then your enterprise apps are instances of that class. Now, in a single tenanted app, there's a one-to-one map. I have one app registration that has an enterprise app, but in a multi-tenanted app, if I create a SaaS solution, then my app registration I own, and then if somebody else goes and installs my application in their tenant, let's say I'm Office, right? If they install Office, they will have a service principal, an enterprise app that corresponds to mine, and this is where they would go to configure all their fine-tuned permissions and roles and what have you. So just to very high level of what an enterprise app is to an app registration. It's a one-to-one mapping or one-to-many mapping. And in this instance, single-tenant app is a one-to-one mapping. If you want to quickly jump into your enterprise app, you can come into the overview and jump into here, and you'll see that it loads the mapped enterprise app here. So over here, we just need to assign users and groups. So we can either do this or this. So let's go users and groups. Right now, there's only one. So we need to say add user or group, none selected. So let's say 1, 2, 3, select, and now we need to select a role. If there was only one role, you would only get a default option, so you can select. Now we have multiple roles. It says which one do you want to give them access to, and I will make all of us administrators, because anything else would be sad. I want admin rights to everything. Okay, so we've done that. That's now saved and configured. Now you notice that before I had default access, but now I also have product admin access. And now we need to go and update our code. So let's jump into VS Code here. And let's find the products controller. And then up here, you'll notice that instead of saying roles and then the GUID of the group, we are going to use the actual names of those roles. There you have it. And then in the view as well, we need to configure the rule to say that if I am part of either group, then I should be able to access the products link, or I should be able to see the products link. That's even better way to put it. So I think I put, yeah, I think I have way too much code here. And then I need to, there you have it. So in here again, we say if the user is in a specific role, i.e. the product viewers, or the user is in the role of product administrators, then they can actually see the products link and then navigate to that. Now we also need to add a new action for creating new products. So what we're saying here is that if I'm an admin, I should also be able to create products in the application. But if I'm a viewer, I can only see I can peruse the catalog. So let's go. First thing, let's create a new products view model in the models folder. So let's jump to that. Products view model. Product view model.cs. Let's paste our beautiful code. Then in the product controller, we need to add these three things. So let's go back again. Let's add some links, some usings. And then right below that, we have the create. And so we have two actions here. One is for creating for viewing the creation page, and then we have a post. So we have a get and a post, and one of them is for allowing us to view the form and fill it in, and the other one is for posting to that and adding it to our products catalog. And in the index CSS/HTML of the products view, yeah, we need to add that. So here in the views under products index, we need to say I think at the end, right? Folders above the table element, add this link. Okay, we're going above there. What this code does is says if you are part of the product administrator's role, I will provide you with a link to click on it so you can create a new product. Let's save this one. See, I haven't saved this one, and I haven't saved this one either. And then we'll be wondering why my code is broken, apart from the fact that I can't copy paste properly. Okay. And we have the the views products folder, we need to create a create CS.html. That's the view that will allow us to actually go and add a new product. So let's go here under views in the products. We need to have a create one. So a new file, create.cshtml. Uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter, it will map it for us. Okay, so quite a bit of code over here. In effect, it does some validation. It checks that you filled in all the necessary fields in the form, and then it has a save button down here, line 25, that will do the post onto our controller with the data that we selected or collected from the form. Okay. Is there anything else there? No, there isn't anything else. In effect, if we've done everything right up until this point, we should be able to build and run the application without any issues. So let's see what happens. Dun, dun, dun. Let's stop this one. Let us .NET run. I will also sign out and sign in again, because remember, we already have an ID token sitting there in the cache and it might not have the right information either also. So let's navigate to our page. Let's go sign out. Partially sign out, don't sign out from ID as well. And then if I head back, localhost 5001, it will ask me to sign in again. And now, take this out. We have the role here. I'm a product admin. And now I can click on the products. It's working, which is exciting. And now I can click on the create new. And I can say reactor. What's that? Reactor mascot. Do we have a reactor mascot, Rebecca? If not, we should get one. Reactor mascot. Is it electronics? No, it is computers. Computers. It should be gadgets. Save. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, look at that. It's down here. All worked for us. Let me zoom in so everybody can see that. Right. So there you go. That's the summary. Let's go back into our test the knowledge and wrap it up. And that actually takes us to the end of the certification as well. So you should receive a certificate saying, you did it. You did great. So let's see. Where is our page? Here, there, and there. Exercise. So we run it. We can see the claims. And the question now is, or the question that asks is, which of the following statements best describes Rbac, role-based access control? Is when users are assigned to roles instead of being directly assigned access or permissions in an app. Or request-based access control is when users request access to a group and the group owner approves the request. Surely by now everybody can answer that. Please let me know that you can answer this. But this is all about Rbac. Assigning requiring to be assigned to a role so you can access a specific application. And then the second one is to support application roles in custom ASP.NET app that uses MSAL and the OpenID Connect middleware. You must do which of the following? Enable the default claims mapping on the OpenID Connect middleware and set the role claim to roles. Disable the default claims mapping on the OpenID Connect middleware and set the role claims type to app roles. And disable the default mapping on OpenID Connect middleware and set the role claim type to roles. We did it. I hope you answered the same. And I hope that this whole thing made sense to you. Let's go into our summary. So today we'll learn about role-based access control in our ASP.NET apps. As I said before, you could use other frameworks to implement the same kind of logic. It might not be as well built in as it is in ASP.NET, and role-based Authorization in ASP.NET has been fantastic for many years, so this is not something new. In fact, if you take all their code and bring it here, all you have to do is just change probably from groups to roles, configure your roles inside Azure AD, point your authentication framework to Azure AD, and off you go. So many, like very few changes to take an older ASP.NET app and modernize the authentication. In fact, I did a couple of streams with JP as well on how to modernize that. We have a couple of blog posts as well that explain how to take older ASP.NET apps and move them to modern authentication. And therefore, there are lots of paths, sometimes quite a bit of a manual effort, but it's usually about removing code rather than adding code. With the latest Microsoft Identity Web, you add very few lines of code to implement authentication authorization. As you notice, we didn't have to do anything in the middleware to enable authorization, other than if we look back into our solution. In here, if we go to the index or startup.cs, sorry, you'll notice that we have a couple of things. One of them is adding the authorized filter, which uses a default policy, right? So we want everyone to be authenticated before they access our app, and then we want to use an authorized filter based on our policy, and then down here you just need to have the app use authorization. So all in all, literally 4 lines of code and a tag to configure that fine-grained control. It can even be more fine-tuned and more fine-grained. But most of the effort is actually on Azure AD to provide you with the appropriate settings, and then all that gets propagated down with the ID token, and your code has very little work to do. We talked about groups and roles. Groups don't scale well. They're not good for large organizations, especially for users that belong to many groups, like Microsoft, for example. There's limitation on the information they provide. There's also limitation of how many groups you can get, and it's slightly more arcane and older system for managing access. We recommend everyone moves into a role-based Rbac or role-based authorization, where you assign groups and users to roles, and then your application can benefit from that and provide the appropriate access. This is the end of our workshop. Let me bring, I don't know if Rebecca is still with us. Let me check very quickly to make sure that, no, she's not signed in at the moment, so we can wait for a couple of seconds. I do have a slide to show. It's the necessary slide. Just please do not kill groups for roles. These have their own benefits. Ask AD guys to also kill security groups. No, I'm not saying kill the groups. They do have a benefit, very important. But rather than using group-based authorization in your apps, I want you to use roles, and you can assign those groups to the roles. I don't have the power, unfortunately, to ask any of these changes, but please feel free to actually use our Discord to provide this kind of feedback, because we can take it back to the product group and ask them based on data. Like if I have hundreds of people asking for the same thing, I think it probably makes more sense rather than me saying, I heard somebody from the stream saying they would like to see that. So the more people that discuss and the more people that vote on these things, then the better it is. And Rebecca is actually with us right now. So let me add her back to our fantastic stream so she can also provide her own messaging. So let me change to that. And then it takes a little bit of effort, you know, every time that somebody comes into the stream, I need to make sure that they are added, because we get dynamic links for these things. And you're back.
Cool.
You're back.
Thanks. Back and better than ever.
It's good to know.
Thanks, thanks, Christos. This was great. I appreciate, you taking the time and going through this series with the reactor. I really appreciate it. And also JP, wherever he is in the universe right now, for his contributions to past sessions as well. Dropped in the chat for a few of the groups, just our survey. So if you have the opportunity, the Microsoft Reactor puts out a lot of free content. We can be found at www.microsoftreactor.com. Also, You can find us on Meetup. So we have 12 locations internationally, and eventually we will return to in-person sessions. So there's a few, physical spaces there, 12 spaces around the world, but we also are running a lot of virtual content. So I dropped a survey into the chat. If you're part of the Microsoft Reactor community, do fill out that survey. It's brand new. We just got permission to put it out, and you can actually enter in whatever topics and things you'd like to see in the future. So thanks.
Well, thank you, everyone. Please feel free to fill in the survey if you like what you saw, if you want to have follow-ups, if you want to have more advanced content, if you want us to take you through different scenarios or do it again. Please do let us know. Join our Discord channel as well for any questions for this course or any identity questions in general. Make sure you follow and subscribe to Twitch and YouTube for content. We put more than 6 hours worth of content weekly on our YouTube channel, and we stream live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific time on our Twitch channel. So you can find us there. We're usually in the Microsoft Developer channel as well. And we appreciate all the support, and we look forward to seeing you later this week. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay happy, enjoy the lovely weather if you have lovely weather, and we will see you soon. And Rebecca, thank you for the opportunity again. It's been fantastic.
Oh my God, it's been amazing. No, thank you. And take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you later.